Today we've got a very exciting procedure. We're modifying this Volkswagen Golf R, and today we will be completely refreshing the suspension. I picked up a suspension kit from ECS Tuning. I'll have the links for that in the description and some more information about that later on in the video. Alright, so I decided I'm going to remove the axle bolts on the outside of the axles. And the first step for doing that is actually removing this cap here. What we're going to need to do is we're going to need to pull the wheel, push this cap out from the back, reinstall the wheel, drop the car so that it's on the ground and the wheel won't spin. Then we can remove that axle bolt. If you remember, I did the axle on this vehicle, so it's going to look very similar to that. Alright, now that that's broken loose, we can put the car back up and take the wheels off and start removing the suspension. Alright, I'm going to grab the GoPro and I'll take you around here and show you what we got to do. Alright, so we are going to be removing this strut, which means we will have to remove this nut off of the end link. This is a triple square that you can put inside the bolt and remove the nut. I believe this is a M6 and an 18 millimeter. Then we're going to have to remove this triple square bolt. This is the pinched bolt, and that has a nut on this side. When we remove that, then we're going to have to get our spindle spreader tool back here and open that up. At that point, we can then remove the axle bolt, pull the outer CV spline out of the hub. We will go up under the engine bay and remove the top hat bolts, and hopefully then we can remove this whole assembly, and it just, at that point, then we're just gonna have to install the new assembly. Oh, I did forget, we are going to have to remove these 16 millimeter nuts here that hold the lower control arm to the hub. I think that's it. So let's get started. I do want to mention that we'll want to apply PV Blaster to anything on here. As you can see, there's lots of rust, just a consequence of driving in Wisconsin. This comes with the installation kit. I already had one of these, but it's good to know. I think those are 13. What we are doing today is we're lowering this vehicle, and the way I'm going to be doing that is just a complete suspension refresh. New springs, new shocks, all the way around. And I picked up a suspension kit at ECS Tuning. I've got the link to that down in the description and a little bit more information about that later on in the video. But what I decided to pick up was the kit that lowered the vehicle the least amount. I wanted it to still be drivable. I didn't want to scrape on every driveway. So what I picked up was this VWR or Raceline cup kit. So what you get here is obviously front strut. You got the rear shock and the two springs, front and rear. So with the ECS Tuning installation kit, you get a new bump stop, top hat, the new axle bolt, and the new pinch bolt and nut. Here's that nut for the pinch bolt. So as you saw, I just removed this shroud from the old strut. Basically, that's the only reason I had to take that apart, is so I could salvage this. Now we can put the bump stop on, put this all together and get it back in the car. The nice thing about this suspension is you do not have to compress it, the spring at all, because there's enough threads up here. Okay, now that this is done, I can reinstall this into the vehicle. You just want to make sure that the bottom of the spring is butted up to the stop down here, and that this is seated nicely up on top here. I think that's where I went wrong with the OEM suspension. It wasn't seated nicely. The spring ended up coming off of the top hat, and as you can see, completely destroyed the shock, and the spring doesn't look so hot either. So only other thing you got to know is up on these top hats there's arrows pointing this way and this way right here. They just want those arrows to point forward and backwards on the car. So front of the car is that way. This is how you want to mount it. Obviously this is your tab for the end link, which needs to be going backwards. So that's going into the car. We can come up here and twist this around so that it aligns the arrows. Other than that, I wish this would come up a little higher and seat up here nicely, but I'm good with this. This is gonna feel so much nicer than what I was driving. All right, at this point, it's just putting the new strut in and reinstalling it in the opposite order that we took it out. And we'll want to make sure that we torque everything to spec. I'll try to find a torque spec document and I'll link that in the description below. So let's drop this hub down a little bit and see if we can get this new strut spring assembly installed. Well, with that done, let's move to the rear. So for the rears, they're much easier. No need to remove the axle bolt. All we're gonna need to do There's a couple bolts up here holding the top of the strut, one bolt on the bottom holding the strut on. With those out, the strut's going to come straight out. The spring is just sitting in here, and you just need to take this lower control arm bolt, it's a nut and bolt down here, take that off while supporting it, and then once it's out you can slowly let it down and the spring will come out. So let's get into it. Headlight leveling sensor is back here, and I totally forgot to take it off. Here it is, 3 bolts. Take this off before you pull the lower control arm down. So it looks like we're gonna need to salvage the bump stop from this guy. And actually, now that I look at this, I bet you this is the bump stop for the rear, and I was supposed to salvage the bump stop from the front. Well, we'll just figure it out. Yeah, that's for sure what we were supposed to do. We were supposed to put these on the rear, I think. We did get new shrouds here. Good enough. Cool. So now, old. New. This is old. I'm thinking that this is perfectly fine to reinstall, but with the installation kit comes a brand new one. So might as well install this. So the nut, that started. The front strut used a 6mm Allen, and this one looks like it uses a 5. Alright, this is ready to go back on the car. Looks like we get new top mounting bolts. Turn this guy on. Here. We'll torque those to spec a little bit. Again, torque specs are going to be down below. We'll torque this to spec again. Torque specs are in the description. For now, that's good enough. Alright, so we have to salvage this bushing from the other spring, and that will sit nicely in here in the lower control arm. So I'll put that in real quick. Just kidding. This thing goes up at the top. Alright, so this is, I think, the headlight leveling sensor. And I was supposed to take it off before I lowered this to avoid overextending it, and I forgot to, so I'm hoping that it's not broken. But it's just 3 T25 screws that go right into this lower control arm. Alright, so there we have it. We've got the new suspension in the Golf R. All we've got to do is go around and torque everything to spec. Torque specs will be in the description below. I'll link a installation guide to ECS Tuning coilovers. They have all the torque specs in there, and they kind of go step by step on going through coilover or suspension installation, so go check that out. I'll also have the part links to these Raceline, the VWR race suspension. I'll have that in the description below. If you go through those links, it's going to take you to ECS Tuning. If you do decide to purchase something on ECS Tuning, I do get a small kickback. It really does help this channel, helps me keep on doing these videos. So, like I said, all I've got to do is torque everything to spec, put the wheels back on, and we'll see how it looks.